We are starting a brand new series for the next 4 weeks called Love, Dates, and Heartbreaks. So, who is this series for? This series is for all the single folks who would like to date someday. If you're a graduate of high school, college, and you want to date someday, this series is for you. If you're a married person and you want to have a better marriage, this series is for you. If you're a single person and you're dating right now, man, this series is really for you. In fact, I've been a married person, but I'm no longer a married person, and you're thinking about jumping back into that scary world and arena of dating, this series is for you. And it's for you because that whole area, it's complicated. It's just really complicated. Today, I'm really excited to talk about this because this is something that really breaks my heart. And it breaks my heart because of the decisions that we make in dating and in relationship with each other. And so I'm really excited for you and for me as we talk about this because there are a lot of things that I wish I would have known. Any of you just got certain pockets in your life, you go, how come I didn't know that? Like, I wish I would have known that before I got involved in that. And this is one of those areas, man, I wish I would have known some of the things we're going to talk about today before I started dating. Because it would have saved not just me, but a lot of other people some not just heartbreak, but some pain and some scars, you know. So this today, as we're talking about this is not like, man, I've made all the right decisions, and so I'm going to let you know all what those right decisions are. I made a lot of bad decisions, and I've learned because at the age of 20, I came into a relationship with Christ, and I began to follow Him, and I began to change, and the way I made decisions began to change. And so this is somebody who made a lot of bad decisions, came into Christ, and then started making some better decisions. Because here's the important thing about our decisions. Our decisions become the story that we're writing. You're writing a story right now. It's called your life. You're writing your life story. And every decision that you make, especially relationally and morally, those are becoming the chapters of your life. That's the story. I mean, think about this. One day your kids are going to come to you and say, hey, Daddy, can you tell me how you met Mom? And you want to be able with confidence, not embarrassed, not ashamed of your story, be able to say, yeah, I'd love to tell you how I met your mom, right? I want you to have a story that is a good story that you're proud of. The unfortunate thing is there's a lot of people who are married who are ashamed of their story. In fact, they're hiding their story from their spouse because they're not proud of it. They're ashamed of it. They're concerned that if they ever knew about the story that I've lived, it would really damage our relationship. And I don't want you to have that. I want us to have a story where we're proud of it and it's a good story. But that means that every decision that we make morally and relationally, it becomes a chapter in our story. And look, here's good news. If you've already messed up your story like I had messed up my story big time, God can take a broken story and He can turn it around and make it a beautiful story. And we're going to talk about that today because you need to know this. But I'm going to look because this idea of the steps of our life and the direction that we go in and the paths that we choose and where we end up, it is one that is echoed over and over and over. And if you're just new to reading the Bible or maybe you haven't started yet, you need to know this. If something is said over and over and over in the Scriptures, it's because you and I have a problem with it. And so this one is a big one. So in the book of Proverbs, it says this, that there is a way that seems right to a person, but in the end, it ends up in death. And then it says that there's a path, it's the path of the righteous, which grows brighter and brighter until the full day. So there are these two different paths, these two different ways that you can go, these two different steps, but each one of them takes us in a direction. And so Jesus describes it like this. If you have your Bibles this morning, I'm reading Matthew chapter 7. If you don't have a Bible, you can look up on the screen. We'll read it together. And Jesus says this regarding this idea. He says, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice, that is a wise person. They're like somebody who built their house on a rock. Now, in this particular, it's called a parable. It's a story that Jesus is telling. When He says house, He's talking about our life. It's a metaphor for our life. So this entails all the different pieces of our life. It entails our identity, it entails our future, it entails your career, it entails your relationships, it entails the way that you handle your finances. When we build our life and all those elements of our life upon the rock, and the rock in this case is God. It's Jesus. Jesus is saying when you build your life on me, when you take steps to lean against me, to press into me, to follow me, then you're like a wise person who's building their house on this rock. And here's why this is important. Because there's going to come rains. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the wind blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall because it had its foundation on the rock. So we don't live in an area where there's as significant flash flooding as in some other parts of the country. When you see things that happen like that in those torrential rains, that was a familiar part of the landscape that they lived in. They were used to the fact that out of nowhere, these clouds could come and dump so much rain in such a short period of time, it would turn into, these rushing rivers that didn't exist before, and they would wash away everything. And so when Jesus is talking about this, and he's making this metaphor about your house and your life, and these inevitable things that are going to happen, they're going to happen, and you need to build your life in a way so that they can withstand it, they got this picture. And so Jesus says, if you build your house on me and on my teaching, when this happens, it won't get destroyed. But then there's another path, and that path is the one who hears what I'm saying, but they don't put them into practice. They don't do what I'm saying. They don't build their life on me, and that person is like a foolish person. He's not calling them a fool. He's just saying, it's just not wise for you to build your house in sand. So, but they're like a person who builds their house in sand, and the same thing happened. That same rain, it came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew, and it beat against the house. But their outcome is not the same. They had a crash. Everything that they had built was destroyed, and the crash was a great crash. So here's what I'm trying to say with this part right here, is that every decision we make, especially relationally, morally and relationally, it becomes part of our story. And the decisions that you and I make and the steps that we take today, whether you're married, whether you're single, whether you go, I never want to date, or whether you go, I would like to date and I would like to meet somebody, regardless of where you are, every decision that we make relationally and morally ends up becoming the story that we tell tomorrow. Every single decision. And I believe that God wants you to have an amazing story. And if you're guys, can I just grab your face masks and say, guys, I want you to have a story where you are not a hypocrite in the story. I don't want you to be a hypocrite in the story. Anybody like hypocrites? None of us like hypocrites. So when I say this, what am I talking about? Look, if somebody treated your sister the way that you date the person that you're dating, would you want to do something to them? I've got 2 daughters and I have a sister, and this used to happen to me all the time. I'd go walking through the mall. My sister she is drop dead gorgeous. And I would get it would be just going to the mall to fight everybody. Don't be looking at my sister like that. Don't be talking to my sister like that. Right? If somebody treated the person, let's say your mom or your niece, the way that you treated the person that you're dating, would you want to do something to them? If that's the case, and you're acting like that, then you're being a hypocrite. And I'm just saying, don't be a hypocrite. Guys, don't be a hypocrite. Don't treat people the way that you and I wouldn't expect others to treat the beautiful women, the amazing women in our lives. And ladies, I'm gonna say something to ladies, and I feel stupid doing this because I'm not a lady. I'm not a lady, and I know some of you are going, oh, he's gonna mansplain. I'm not trying to mansplain. Okay, so I'm just going to do this, and then I'm going to walk off stage, and then we're going to be done. Ladies, don't allow yourself to be mistreated. Don't allow people to treat you like a commodity. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I'm honestly glad for the social upheaval right now, the Me Too movement, because it's bringing attention to the fact that in many ways our culture treats women like a commodity, and it's disgusting. It really is. A commodity is that thing that you buy or you sell or you trade, or, when you're done with it, maybe eventually you trade it in or you trade it away and get a new one. That's what a commodity is. And I don't know what environment you've been in or how you've managed your relationships, but ladies, sometimes what happens is because of the way we manage our relationships, because of the culture that we live in, because of the interactions that we've had, we begin to feel, and ladies, you begin to feel like a commodity. And I don't want you to feel that way. And I don't believe God does. I believe God wants you to feel extraordinary value and special beyond belief, precious. Not just because God says so, but because the men in our culture and in your life treat you like it's so. So men, I want to challenge you. I'm throwing myself in there. Rise up and become gentlemen. Gentlemen is powerful. That's not weak. Self-control is not weak. Self-control is powerful. Deferring to the wishes of others, that is powerful. Showing kindness and mercy and grace, that is powerful. Those are powerful things. But men, that takes effort for you and I to be something different than what most of our culture is moving toward and most of our culture pushes towards. And ladies, wouldn't you like some gentlemen in your life? In your workplace? Maybe even in your own home. Husband, be a gentleman, right? We would. And I just want to encourage you ladies, do everything that you can in your own power, in your own control, not to allow yourself to be mistreated. Because you are amazingly precious, whether you believe it or not, in the eyes of your Heavenly Father. And men need to treat women like that. Now, there are two big myths in our culture. There are many, but there are two big ones that underlie, I think, a lot of our behavior, a lot of our wrong behavior when it comes to relationship. And so those two myths are kind of underlying assumptions. They're in our lives, even though maybe we haven't thought about it this way or heard about it this way, and they drive a lot of our behavior. And here is the first big one. It's the title of our message. It's the right person myth. It's the right person. It's this idea that once you meet the right person, and we call it soulmate, once I meet that right person, everything will be all right. So look, I don't need to worry about what I do today between that time of meeting that person, because once I meet them, everything will be okay. So I can treat guys however I want, I can treat ladies however I want, I can do whatever I want, and then all I've got to do is find the right person, and everything will be all right. And so we just do whatever, assuming that I just need to find the right person and my life will be okay. And so some of us are looking for that right person to make everything okay. Some of us found that right person. Some of us started moving in with that right person, or we got married to that right person. And then we come to this place where we go, I don't think I got the right person. Right? And when I say what's coming next, it's going to sound funny, but it really influences a lot of our behavior. So here's what we think. We come to this conclusion that somehow I must have chosen the wrong right person. So here's what I need to do. I need to go choose and find the next person. Now when I put that up on the screen, it looks crazy. But this is the underlying thought that happens in many marriages. In fact, I had this friend, he was spending some time with us. He said, you know, Greg, I'm really surprised. The older I get now, I'm seeing things that I never expected to see. My friends who are in their 40s and 50s now are walking away from their marriages. What's up with that? It's the right person myth. I must have married the wrong right person, so I need to find another right person. So I'm not happy in my relationship. I'm not happy with that person, so I got to go find another person who will make everything all right. And it's the right person myth. That right person myth also translates to a very microscopic level to our own lives. Not only will everything be all right, but I'll be all right. All I need to do is find that right person, and then all my bad habits will be absolved and disappear, right? If I find that right person, then I won't have to look at pornography anymore. This is what we think. If I find that right person, then I don't have to worry about managing my money because I'm going to marry somebody who's rich. If I find that right person, then I don't have to worry about my own insecurities because they will make me whole. If I just find that right person, then I'll be all right. Now, those of you who are married, you go, that don't even work, right? You go, man, that's the stupidest thing ever. It may be, but it's also the thing that we do a lot of. And I'll tell you why. Because getting in a relationship and finding somebody is a lot different than staying in a relationship. And finding somebody is a lot sexier than staying in a relationship. That's why movies and reality shows, they're not about staying in a relationship. They're about finding the relationship because it's all about romance and falling in love. And so you watch movies, ladies, guys, you watch for an hour, 45, 2 hours. It's all about this couple. And you know they're going to fall in love. I mean, the movie's about them. So for an hour and 2 hours, you're watching them fall in love. And at the end, the movie ends. How does it end? They fall in love. And it stops. And we glamorize the falling in love part, and the bigger part of that is the staying in love part. Those of you who've been married for more than a couple months, you realize, oh, wow. Because all the movies point to to fall in love. Everybody do this. You got a pulse? You're qualified to fall in love. That's all you need. You need a heartbeat. And have you ever had a crush on somebody you knew you were ever going to be with? Falling in love is easy. Staying in love requires so much more. And this is where Jesus helps us. And this is what our series is about. It's about the so much more that we do, not just to find the right person or fall in love, but to find the person and stay in love with them. And it's a little bit different than we think. Here's the second myth real quick that is real prevalent. It's this: I just need to make a promise. It's the promise myth. If I make a promise, then it really doesn't matter everything that I've done. It'll all just be swept away. It'll all be clean, and I'll be able to just promise my way into a new future. And for those of you that are married, you know that you cannot just go to the altar, make a promise, put on the magical ring, and you're changed. All of a sudden, you're a person of character, and you're prepared to follow through with your commitment and make sacrifices in your relationship. Look, this ring, it don't change a thing. It don't. Is that a song? Because that sure could be a song right there. If you use that, I get some royalties. The promise myth is this: when it comes to having a long-term, satisfying relationship, all one has to do is make a promise. And that's not true. Making a promise is not the same as keeping a promise, right? It's not. If you're an athlete or if you're a student or whatever, if you have a midterm coming up and you tell your teacher, I promise I'm going to do great on this test, but you don't prepare for it, you're not going to do great on that test. If you tell your team, we're going to win this game, I promise, and you go before the media and you say, I promise we're going to win this game, making a promise is a lot easier than keeping a promise. In order to keep a promise, we need to be people who are prepared to keep promises. So in that, promises are no substitute for preparation. They don't change or take the place of preparation. And then when I put this next thing up on the screen, you're going to think I'm an idiot. But okay, go ahead, put that next one up there. If you aren't preparing, you won't be prepared. And just going and standing before people and having everybody there does not prepare you to make and keep the promise that this thing represents. This ring to me doesn't represent a promise that I made. It's a promise that I keep every single day. But the only way that I prepared to do that, and here's where this really helps. This is where the message of Jesus, and this is where following Jesus has practical application. This is not just some, intangible spiritual thing. This is practical application for our lives right here, right now, in this earth, in this lifetime, in your relationship. If you're dating, in your relationship, if you're married, this is where it all comes home, because following Jesus makes us different people. It makes us better people. It makes us the people who will be better at life. Following Jesus will make you a better boyfriend. It will make you a better girlfriend. It will make you a better future husband, future wife. It will make you a better parent. It will make you a better husband. It will make you a better wife. Following Jesus may not necessarily, and what we're going to talk about today, it may not necessarily speak specifically to finding the right person, but it will definitely help you become the right person. Now, honestly, in Jesus' day, most of the marriages, they were arranged marriages, so Jesus wasn't even addressing that. But what Jesus was more concerned about, rather than just finding the right person, was you and I becoming the right people. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. In fact, Jesus has a lot to say about becoming the right person and not allowing these two myths to come into our life. And the reason why this is so powerful, maybe you've just experienced this yourself. You ever bump into somebody that you haven't seen for like a long time? And something about them, they're different. I mean, they didn't have to tell you anything. You just interact with them. I have some people, and I see them on Facebook now. And when I went to school with them, oh my gosh, I was, afraid to kind of turn my back on them because of what they might do to me. And I was kind of the same person. And then you hear them on Facebook or you bump into them and you go, wow, something's different. And you dig a little bit and you find out, what happened was they became a follower of Jesus. And they began to read the Bible and they began to get close to Jesus. And over time, they became a different person. They became a better person. We have this guy in our small group. We were just joking about this last week because when he first came to our small group, he was uptight. He was borderline angry and just intense and worried and overwhelmed. And he would come to our group and he'd say, I just want to let you know, because he wanted to make it clear, I don't believe in this stuff at all. I don't believe in the Bible. I'm reading it, but I don't believe in it. And I'm doing this because of my wife. My wife does. She believes in this, so I'm just supporting her, and I'm here. And he told me, as long as this thing helps me and doesn't go negative, then I'm here. And so that for 2 years, he would come and he would say that, and he would come and say that with me. I love that honesty. And then one day, something changed. Something changed. And one of the guys in our group was saying, man, I remember the day that you were baptized. Even in that moment, like you changed. You became something different. Because he was telling us about how his marriage has just kind of blossomed. And, he was like, I'm not exactly sure what it is. And it wasn't like I did this or I did that or I did the other. Here's what happened. I began following Jesus. And in that process, one day, I became something different than I was. I became something better than I was. And so this is all about, if you're married, enhancing, increasing, causing your marriage to grow, not just by finding the right person, but by becoming that right person. And so let me ask you this question. I'll ask you two questions. If you're single, here's your question. Are you the person you're looking for is looking for? Are you that person? And we all kind of have a concept in our mind, but are you what you're envisioning? Are you that person? Are you the person that the person you're looking for is looking for? And if you're married, here's a great question. Are you still the person they were looking for? Are you still that person? Are you still that person? Or has life, and I see this happen often, life and the busyness of life and the busyness of business and the busyness of families and kids and just doing what happens in life, and sometimes it's sinful habits, all of that stops us from becoming the people that we were created to become. So are you still the person that they were looking for? You know how you can do both those things? Follow Jesus. Follow Jesus and you will become and you will stay that person. So here, we're going to look in John 15 this morning. So if you have your Bibles, open up to John 15. And I'm going to bring this a little closer. Thanks, Sean. Awesome. John 15, and this is an illustration. Jesus is going to tell, and this is really interesting. This is like one of the last things that he says. This is the night that he is going to be arrested and taken off to the place where he's going to eventually die on a cross. And he has this big, long discourse. And so these things, this is like the last thing. Jesus kind of saying, if you forget everything I've said before this, remember this. And so he tells them what's called a parable. A parable, it's a story. And so if you're new to Bible reading, or when you do read the Bible, you need to know that when you look at the stories that Jesus tells, there's usually three different parts to it. There's the God part, there's the Jesus part, and then there's the us part in it. Okay, so God part, Jesus part, and us part. And this is the parable that he tells in John 15. I'm going to tell it to the plant. He says this, I am the vine, and my Father is the gardener. Okay? So this is my hibiscus vine. I'm this vine, and my Father is the one who tends to the vine. And then he goes on to say this. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit. Okay, so why does he cut it off? Jesus is focusing on something very specific. Don't miss this part. This is all about how you and I get connected to Jesus. This is how people get connected to Jesus, and how Jesus bears fruit through the people that are connected to him. Jesus is very concerned about this. He's very concerned about our fruit bearing. He's concerned about us getting connected, and then he wants to bear fruit through our lives. So he says those that aren't bearing fruit, he cuts them off, and then those that are bearing fruit, he prunes so that it may become even more fruitful. So the whole idea and discussion is about bearing fruit. He wants you and I to bear fruit, and he doesn't tell us specifically right now what it is, and I'm going to talk about that at the end because he talks about it at the end. This is really important. He doesn't talk about the specific part, but he says, here's the idea. I want you to bear fruit. Your life should have a product coming out. And look, regardless of whether you're a follower of Christ or not, all of our lives are bearing fruit. Everybody's bearing fruit. Relationally, we're bearing some type of fruit. So for some of us, it's reputation. For others of us, it's the outcome of the decisions that we're making on a moment-by-moment basis. Everybody lives and creates a movement that affects other people. We're all bearing fruit. And so Jesus goes on and says, look, there's a certain fruit that I want to produce through you, and in order for that to happen, he says, verse 4, you have to remain in me as I also remain in you. You have to stay connected with me. You have to stay plugged into me. The other way, the more popular or common way that Jesus says is follow me. That's how we stay connected. Follow me, remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit of itself unless it remains in the vine. So it totally makes sense to them, right? I'm not sure if he took something like this, but this is the idea that if you cut off the branch from the source, then it will shrivel up, it will die, and it will not bear fruit. And so for that means if we get cut off from the source, if we get unplugged, if we get disconnected, if we stop following, then we will not be able to bear fruit, the fruit that God wants us to bear either. And so I love this, he gets real personal and he kind of gives the application now. I mean, can you imagine, this is like his 12 men, and they're looking at him, and John and Andrew and Matthew and Peter, they're just there, right? And Jesus says, here's the application for you. So neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. You cannot bear the fruit that I want to bear through you if you do not remain plugged into me, if you do not remain connected to me, if you do not follow me, you will not be able to produce what I want to produce through your life. It won't be able to happen. And so then he summarizes, he says this, I am the vine. And I'm thinking, okay, they're going like, we get this, Jesus. I'm the vine, you're the branch. If you remain in me and I in you, if you continue to follow me, if you continue to stay connected with me, and he makes them this promise, you will bear much fruit, for apart from me, you can do nothing. And here's the idea. They're not going to bear much fruit because somehow they learn to be fruit bearers. They're going to bear much fruit. Why? Because they're connected to him. That's why they're going to bear much fruit. It's not just because they learned a technique or because they went to a class or because they saw a video. They're going to bear fruit because they followed him and they stayed connected with him. And the natural product of that is this fruit that's going to come out of their life. And then he gets specific in verse 9 and he says this, as the Father has loved me. Okay, wait a minute. We're talking about plants and now we're talking about love. Because Jesus wants them to know this is the fruit that I want to see from your life. This is what I want to do through you. This is something that hasn't happened before. And this is what I want to do through you. As the Father has loved me, so I have loved you. And here's the idea within the context of this vine and the branches and bearing fruit. Jesus is saying, as the Father has shown and demonstrated his love through me, I want you to bear fruit, or what I'm going to do is I'm going to show the Father's love now through you. As the Father has loved me, so I'm loving you. And I want that love that I've experienced and that I've demonstrated, I want that to come through in your life. And so he tells them, in order for that to happen, he says this, now remain in my love. Okay, so God is the gardener, Jesus is the vine, and we're the branches. And the only way for us to actually be connected to God's love is to be connected to Jesus. If we're staying connected with Jesus, then we'll stay connected with God's love, and we will have the fruit of God's love through our lives. Is that right, Jesus? And Jesus is like, yeah, that's right, that's it. And then he goes on here to say this last part. Up until this point, this has been really relational, right? I mean, in relationship with me, you stay connected relationally with me, and the fruit of who I am is going to come through your life. And then he kind of starts to take it in a different direction. He says this, if you keep my commands, you will remain in my love. Well, wait a minute. I thought this was just stay connected with you, and I was going to become something different. You were going to do something in me, and then I would just become the man that my wife had always dreamed that I'd be. And Jesus, no. He's going to define how we remain connected to him, how we remain plugged into him, how we remain connected to the vine, Jesus. He says this, if you keep my commands, then you will remain connected to me. Okay, so Jesus, what are your commands? I mean, there's probably a long list of them. Got to figure out what I'm supposed to do. I think this is how we typically approach God. Tell me what all the commands are. And Jesus says, he really just gives us one command, and this is the command. My command is this. Listen to this. He says, love each other. To which, can you imagine? It's the same reaction that you're having right now. Big deal. I mean, okay, right? That's good, you know. Somebody said a long time ago, can't we all just get along? We just loved each other. Everything would be just good. And Jesus is actually talking, and hasn't finished his sentence, about a very specific and focused kind of love. This is not just the love, do whatever you want, and you got to figure it out on your own. This is a very specific, and what he has in mind is a very specific type of fruit. And right now, it's really difficult for them to understand this. But Jesus has in mind a type of love that has yet to be demonstrated on the earth. And so he says this as he goes on here. I want you to love each other as I have loved you. Again, because this is a relational thing. You're going to learn this in relationship with me, and in this way, when you learn it in relationship with me, you're going to be able to let it flow through your life. But this is not the kind of love that they probably had in mind. Because this is before Jesus goes to the cross. So they might have had a little bit of an understanding because they saw Jesus in action. So they might have had a little bit of an understanding about this love, but this love would totally be reframed when Jesus, a couple days later, would go to the cross for you and I. And then after the resurrection, they go, oh, I see. This is not what we thought. This is not the permissive, just do whatever you want, do what feels right, figure it out on your own kind of love. This is a very specific love. This is a love that puts others first. This is a love that puts your spouse before your own needs and desires. This is a love that defers to the wishes of somebody else. This is a love that Jesus says lays down their life for their friend. Life doesn't become all about them and getting theirs. This actually becomes all about giving and helping other people. This is a different kind of love. This is the kind of love that Jesus said, pray for your enemies. And you go, well, I'm married. I don't have an enemy. How many of you have ever felt like that person that you're married to somehow become the enemy? And I'm okay, good. Last service they didn't laugh, so I was like, okay, it must be just me or my wife. There are times when even that person you're in relationship with, they feel like the enemy. And Jesus says we're supposed to pray for our enemies, our real ones and our perceived ones. That's the kind of love we're talking about. This is the kind of love that forgives. Everybody just say forgives. Forgives. Offense. Regardless of what the offense is, forgives, lets it go, doesn't hold a grudge, doesn't keep account of wrongs that have been done. In fact, next week we're going to talk a little bit more detail because this is not just some ethereal, spiritual, thing that can be accomplished. No, Jesus is talking about a tangible type of love that he wants you and I to give out of our lives. It would be so much easier for us just to think that this was just this feeling or this thing that I do, or it's flowers and, it's all. And Jesus said, no. This is taking everything that is a strength for you and all of your resources and using it to bless and to benefit somebody else. That's what this is. This is looking at the other person and deciding to do for them the way that I just did for you on that cross. That's what I'm talking about. That's the fruit that God wants us to bear. And we can't do that unless we're connected to the vine. That's what it means to remain in the vine. That's what it means to remain in his love. It is to learn how to and to allow the love that God has for us to flow through our lives to the other people in our lives. That's what it means. It means to look at our relationships, and it means to consider all of our interactions and all of our behaviors. I mean, think about the people that you bump into at the gym and the people that you bump into. It means to interact with people not through the lens of our own love, but through the lens of the love that God demonstrated to us through Jesus Christ. That means our children, that means your spouse, it means that person that you're dating. It means to treat them through the framework of what God did for us through Jesus Christ. And this is how we become different people. This is how we become somebody who's somebody worth looking for. I'm sorry, you got it up there on the screen already. We allow God's love for you and I to demonstrated through Christ, to be the framework, to be the lens, to be that guiding thing that guides us in all of our interactions and behaviors with other people. And when you do that, you become a person who's worth looking for. When you do that, you become a person who's worth staying for. When you do that, you prepare to make a commitment. When you do that, you prepare to keep a commitment. When you do that, all of your relationships, they get better. And they get better not because you found the right person. They get better because you become the right person. You become a better person. You become better at relationships and loving other people as Christ loved you and me. Now look, if you're married, this is key. This is huge. This is where I think people miss it. If you're single, this is key. This is huge. You can spend the next portion of your life looking for the right person, looking for the right person, looking for the right person. If you're married, you can spend the next portion of your life trying to get him to conform, pressure, nag. And Jesus goes, man, there's a way better way. None of that is honestly going to work. Here's the better way. You begin to follow Jesus, and you become something different. He said, come, follow me, and learn from me. For my burden is light, my yoke is easy, and I am gentle and humble in heart. And you will find rest for your souls. And you'll find peace in your relationships. And you'll find peace not because you found the right person. You'll find peace because you learn to love the way that he loved you. We were talking about this at staff. I'm going to invite the worship team to come and join me. We were just talking around the table, and one of the guys was just talking about his marriage, and you know, he's been married for over 25 years now, and just his marriage together. And he said, and he didn't say it in these exact terms, but there is something that happens when two people not only embrace loving each other as Christ loved them and God demonstrated his love for us through Christ, but when we decide we're going to stay connected to the vine. Man, when two people do this, when two people embrace this idea, then they become in the same direction and things radically change in their relationship. It blossoms. I got to tell you that the key to, I've been married 26 years now. We're going on our 27th year. And my daughter was asking me, you know, like she was asking me the romantic questions. How did you meet mom? And I love sharing the story because, you know what, I fell in love with who your mom is before I fell in love with all the other things that most people look for. We both had made a commitment that we were going to become something different. And that has made all the difference, and we continued that commitment. Both of us want to stay, and I'm just telling you, if you do this, if you embrace loving each other as God loved us through Jesus Christ, and you decide that you're going to stay connected to the vine, your relationship will get exponentially better and better. And it's not because you found the right person. It's because you're following the right person and you're becoming the right person. Somebody who can love somebody else the way that God through Christ loves you and I. And I just got to tell you, that's where we're going in this series. That's where we're going. Next week, we're going to talk about some of the details of what love practically looks like for you and I. It's going to be so helpful. But in this moment, I just want to invite you to pray. I'm going to put up this last slide on the screen. Here, ultimately, this is where we're heading towards. The kind of person Jesus leads his followers to become, it's the kind of person that we're all ultimately looking for, and ultimately we want to become. It is the kind of person we're looking for, and it's also the kind of person that we want to become.